Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Next Gen Game Plan, a podcast for future sports leaders. I'm your host, Tyler Darr, and on this podcast, I will be interviewing sports industry professionals to learn about their career paths and what advice they have for those looking to break into sports. Today, we will be joined by Michael Schwartz. Michael Schwartz is a University of Arizona alum who spent the last 11 years working as a sports content researcher for ESPN, helping make shows such as NBA Today, The Jump, and Sports Center Smarter. He covered Arizona basketball for 2 years, worked for the Daily Wildcat for 4 years back in college, and has gained other sports-related experience through a variety of roles. Michael, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast with me. How are you doing today?
Doing great. What an intro.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you here. I'm super excited to hear more about your journey and appreciate all your time.
For sure. Glad to be here.
All right. So, Michael, let's dive right in. To start us off, could you tell us about your background and your journey of how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be in sports, really ever since high school when I found out that's something that you could actually do. I was so excited when I wrote for my high school paper because I could just write about what the Diamondbacks were doing and whatnot. So that was kind of my plan. Right when I got to campus, probably within the first week, I applied for a job at the Daily Wildcat. It felt like it took forever to get hired. It was probably like 1 month in reality. I've just kind of been going along that journey ever since. So yeah, in college, worked at the Wildcat all 4 years. As you noted in my intro, I was a sports editor for a semester. I was an assistant sports editor for a handful, covered U of A basketball, and I also had a TV show at UATV that was kind of like our take on PTI, just with four guys arguing about national sports and Arizona sports. And then we'd get some guests from Arizona athletics. So I've been in this space for a long time and have really just tried to have kind of one thing build upon the next.
Absolutely. That's incredible. No, I totally understand where you're coming from. Once you figure out that sports is something you can do, it gets you really excited.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of kids, especially like, at the lunch table, they're talking about sports back and forth. They're like, I wish I could have my own show. And to see how you've kind of taken that to where you are today is really cool.
That's actually exactly how our TV show came about. There were four of us that took a media law class together just before lunchtime. So after those classes twice a week, we'd always go get lunch together and we would just be arguing about sports nonstop. And there was some girl who sat with us. She's like, wow, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but you're really entertaining. You guys should have your own show. We're like, well, wait, we're on a college campus. We could actually do that. One of the guys was the then director of Camp Student Radio. So kind of we figured out he'd be the host and the three of us would be the panelists. And it just kind of went like that, where it's like, oh, yeah, this is something we can do. And it literally came about from just talking sports with our friends at the lunch table.
I love it. That's awesome. That's the best way to start it, right? And super cool to see how you guys actually turned that into a reality.
Yeah.
So then looking more at your career path, you've had a lot of previous sports writing and internship experiences. What did you learn from those roles and how has it helped you?
In college and right after college, I did 2 internships with MLB.com. I was an associate reporter, where you're basically the backup beat reporter. I got to see, well, first off, that beat reporting in baseball at least probably wasn't for me because those guys, I got to go on one road trip and I ended up working like 46 straight days, just going from, you think a long homestand's over. Nope, you got to go on a cross-country trip. And then you're coming back across to the West Coast from the East Coast. And that was just almost too much for me, although I absolutely loved the internship and being in the clubhouse every day. I got to cover 2 teams that won the division, the 07 Diamondbacks and the 08 Dodgers. So it was just really fun coming to the park every day in the midst of a pennant race and covering U of A basketball. I mean, I think one thing is just learning from the professionals next to you, watching some of the people who are just kind of known as being the elite writers in their craft, like Bruce Pascoe, who's feel like he's been there forever because it felt like he had been there forever when I was there and he's still there. Watching how they go about their business, watching the kind of questions that they're asking and just seeing really how to work that job and even comparing your stories to what they're doing and seeing if you're writing similar stuff, you're probably on the right page.
Absolutely. No, that sounds like a really good experiences for you and kind of seeing what you like and what skills you can develop and all that good stuff. So thanks for sharing those experiences. We appreciate that. I noticed you were a chief blogger and founder for Valley of the Suns, which was
Yeah.
a Phoenix Suns blog. What was that experience like for you?
Honestly, that's probably my favorite thing I've done pretty much in my life and from a professional sense. Certainly not the most lucrative. We never quite got over the hump there. For me, it was kind of before I actually went to grad school. That was my grad school where I was affiliated with ESPN. I was recruited by an ESPN editor named Kevin Arnovitz when I finished my Dodgers internship. And he said, we're going to start this blog network of to cover all 30 NBA teams, and we want you to start the Phoenix Suns one. And the Suns are a team who I've been a fan of since I was 7 years old. I was moving back to Phoenix, where I'm from anyways, and that sounded like literally the thing I wanted to do most in the world. So I got so many, I mean, obviously, like I'd been a writer and did all that in college and had gone to journalism school. So like I knew that stuff. But as far as learning like the new medium, learning video, learning honestly stats, I mean, I kind of dove into some of the NBA advanced stat sites, and that's the same kind of things that I'm doing now. So it really was a prelude to what has become my career. Even things like trying to sell ads, which again wasn't terribly successful, but at least was kind of getting in the game. And just thinking about what kind of coverage you want. It's kind of by now it's a completely new era of journalism. Back 20 years ago, you'd have a preview and a recap, and it was kind of a set formula. And we tried to do things a little bit differently. So like I remember a game, I think Danny Granger, the Pacers, hit a game-winning shot in the final seconds. So literally the entire story focused on the final second of the game and how he got open for that shot. And I think the Suns kind of botched it to leave him open and kind of what that meant. And just trying to always focus on whatever the biggest story was. I had a team of writers. One of them was Mike Schwartz, who is another U of A alum, and he's now the assistant general manager of the Portland Trailblazers and was a ESPN draft analyst. And he got to start right alongside me. He was a freshman at U of A when he started, and we realized he was actually incredible at breaking down prospects on video. And what do you know? Now he's literally one step away from running a team. So yeah, the experience covering the Suns through about 2008 to 13. So I got one really fun playoff run where I was writing stories right next to Jay Adonde on ESPN.com, which for me at the time when I was 24 was a complete thrill. And honestly, probably just one of the most fun things I've done. Having both the autonomy over my content where I'm not really answering to a boss. We can kind of do whatever we thought the best content was, having an awesome team beyond Schmitz. Yeah, just doing what I thought was some great journalism.
Fantastic. No, I think that sounds incredible. The fact that you got to cover one of the teams you're a fan of and really develop those skills that it probably helped you get to where you are today, and seeing who else you got to work with and the journey you were on. That's a super cool experience.
Yeah. It was just the best.
And then based on your experiences, what are some ways that college students can set themselves up for a career in sports?
Yeah, I think it's just really getting as much experience in as many different ways. So like when I went to grad school, I know you'll get to that. They talked about silos and there's so many different silos in the sports industry. Many, like certainly when I was in college, I had no idea that the job that I'm doing now was a thing. In fact, even really before the months leading up to that, I had no idea that there are sports researchers out there, really. I mean, I knew vaguely that there were statisticians, but I had no idea there were researchers on shows doing what I do. But the one guy in grad school I always remember was we took like a little licensing seminar, which for most people, it's like, okay, this is like kind of interesting, but like, I'm not going to do licensing for my job, right? Like it's kind of interesting to know how licensing works. There's one guy in our class who just like, I don't know if he loved it or he saw that it was a great path for a career, but he threw himself into it. He started doing licensing internships and like kind of learning everything about it. And now he does licensing at USC. I think he's the guy in charge by now. So to me, it was, I was always just like, really, man, licensing, that's what you want to throw yourself into? Because, that wasn't exactly my cup of tea. Nothing against it. Great industry, certainly important. But just like seeing him do that just showed me like, hey, everyone is going to find something in this industry that really speaks to them. So just get as much experience as it is, find your licensing. A lot of people in grad school, I know, were into like corporate sponsorship type things and selling them. So I would just say, get as much experience as you can. For me, obviously, that was just trying to do everything at U of A student media, between the TV show and the Daily Wildcat, and then obviously the classwork. So yeah, just try to get as much experience in as many different pots, get as much experience with internships and whatnot. And obviously on a college campus, especially like the University of Arizona, there's a lot of opportunities out there to try different things.
100%. No, I absolutely agree with that. Getting all that experience, not only does it help you stand out in the future, but it helps you figure out what you're interested in. Like you said, your friend who was interested in licensing, and you kind of figured out the media was what you wanted to do. So just taking advantage of all the opportunities.
Yeah.
And then what specific skills do you believe are important for people to have to be successful in the sports industry?
I mean, I think first off, you've got to really want it. I mean, the underside, I'm sure you've heard this, but it's a nights, weekends, and holidays kind of industry. And I've very much found that out. Even like I remember Steve Nash was traded on the 4th of July, I believe back in 2012. And I was visiting my grandpa at his old folks home. I'm like, oh my God, I got to go write a story. Steve Nash was traded to the Lakers. You know, you're kind of always on to some degree. I mean, in my job now, if you're off, you're off, but you're working at all hours of the day. So like last night, I worked till almost midnight. Other times you might be, I mean, the people doing the 7 a.m. Eastern Sports Center are getting there around 3:30 a.m. Eastern. And then holidays, I've worked every Christmas the last 11 years. I've worked the last 11 Christmases. Obviously, Christmas is a huge day for the NBA, which is where I'm largely focused. So that's a day I've got to be working. And then, I mean, what's tough for me right now is the nights, just having a young family. I work about half nights. So that's what's tough. So you've got to really want to be in this industry. It's there's other industries that are easier, but I think you've really got to have that passion for it. And then the skills, I mean, the one skill I wish I had learned more was more of programming type of things. And I think I graduated in 2008. It certainly wasn't something that anyone was talking about in 2008, but like whenever I talk to students, everyone wants to be a general manager of their favorite team, right? Or to work in a front office for a favorite team. And honestly, that probably was my dream as well at some point. And you just need to learn, unless you're an athlete who's going in that way, which very few of us are, obviously. You've got to learn how to code and kind of get in that way. And that's like the one skill that I wish I had, that whenever, because I always love to look at these job descriptions, especially for front office type intro roles. And that's like, then you've got to be very technically proficient in that area. And I think that's one place, if I were to do that sports journey, obviously, again, there's a lot. That's a skill I would definitely wish I had.
100%. No, that's great advice. Those technical skills are very important, and a lot of people might not realize that, but they can take you so far.
Yeah.
And like you said, being able to handle like the high workload, that might not be for everyone, but it's something that you should be aware of before you go into sports, for sure.
For sure. Yep. Nights, weekends, and holidays. It's no joke. That's definitely what, I mean, that's when sports are, right? Like games are nights, weekends, and holidays. So it's goes to say, I mean, there's some 9-to-5 type jobs, but not that many.
And then going into your education, you received your Master's of Business Administration from San Diego State University.
Yeah.
What made you decide to take that route, and how has it helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, so I did the sports MBA program at San Diego State. So the whole curriculum was sort of sports focused, which to me certainly made it a lot of fun. So, sports law, one of my favorite things that we did there was we would negotiate a contract with another student. So one of us would be essentially the player's agent, and one of us would be the front office. And we had to negotiate. They gave us a set of facts on how the pitcher has performed lately, and like how he is in the community, all sorts of different items that you could use in the negotiation. And then we came to an agreement on a contract, and then you had to basically write a paper on why you came up with the terms, or why you negotiated the type of deal that you did. So basically, everything was through a sports lens. I think it just really made me a lot more well-rounded. At Arizona, I passed out of a lot of the math, just being on the journalism side from high school, from taking advanced courses in high school. So I really didn't have a lot of math. I had never taken a statistics class or anything like that. It's basically like an 11-month in the classroom curriculum and then a 6-month internship afterwards. So I got to be exposed to so many different things like marketing, licensing, organizational behavior, certainly statistics, and like running regression analysis, things like that. So I think it was really important to be exposed to all of those things. And then tangibly, how it helped. Like I said, at the end, you have to do a 6-month internship. And the one I got was ESPN. So the stats and information department. So I had actually applied for a real job within the department I'm currently in and didn't even hear back from them. And then I was a certainly older, maybe 26 or so year old intern. I'd already done all of that at Valley of the Suns, and obviously had my undergraduate degree from years before at U of A. So I was competing against 21, 22-year-olds, and definitely had a lot more experience than them at that point. So I think that kind of got me in the door, and that was almost the most tangible thing, being able to get in the door, and then from there being able to secure the full-time job from there.
Yeah, that's incredible. No, it's cool to see how it taught you a lot of different skills, cool experiences, allowed you to kind of build on what you already had. And then the fact that it got you set up to start your career at ESPN is really, really awesome.
Yeah, that's always the hope, that internship. And I feel like most internships are like that specifically, but it's a 10-week internship, and it's really, to me, was a job interview, and a two-way job interview where they're obviously checking you out, but and I think this is also really important for anyone doing internships out there. You're also interviewing them. Do you fit into the culture? I certainly saw when I was 26, I didn't necessarily care about the nights, weekends, and holiday thing. When I'm 38 now, I care about it a lot more. But at that point, it's like, okay, you get to see really what it is. You get to see the people you're working with. You really get to see what you're doing, since a lot of times you don't really know what you're doing before you get to that job. So I think it was really great from that perspective, having 10 weeks, which is a significant amount of time to really check all that out. And then from there, I got very lucky, just, having been there 11 years, there's hiring freezes, there's all sorts of things like that. There was a time around the pandemic where we didn't hire anyone for over a year. So I was lucky enough that there were 3 open spots when I ended the internship. So the timing was definitely good there from that perspective.
And kind of building on that, you started as production research intern at ESPN. How were you able to kind of work your way up through the organization?
Yeah. So like I said, a 10-week internship. And from there, I was hired full-time, which another lucky thing, most people right now are hired part-time, and then you get promoted to full-time after a certain amount of time. And I've since been promoted to senior researcher, which it's one of those funny things. I'm essentially doing the same thing I was at the lower level, just hopefully doing it better, and I think leadership is a big role. It's definitely tough to move up at ESPN from there, but I'm definitely in a spot where a lot more experienced and have got to go on some cool trips and different things like that as I've gone up the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds great. And kind of seeing how you were able to do that and build your skills, and they valued you and took you to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure.
And then kind of looking on a similar note to your job, what does a typical day in your job look like for you?
Yeah. So I'll give you it when I'm on a show. So when I'm on NBA Today, we get in around 6:30 a.m. Pacific time, start looking at the rundown, look at some of the notes from the night before. Then at 7 a.m., we have a show meeting. The producer will, on NBA Today. So he'll go through the rundown. For those of you who don't know, a rundown is basically like a map for a show that kind of has all the elements in it, all the video, all the scripts, all the stat graphics, which I build, and kind of gives us a map so that the producer, the director, certainly the talent, they know where we're going. Obviously, at times, if there's breaking news, you kind of go into unscripted mode and Everyone's kind of going on the fly, but most of the time, assuming nothing crazy happens, you sort of put this plan together at 7 a.m. He asks if anyone else has any ideas. Certainly, Malika Andrews, our host, will chime in and give us her opinions on what we should be talking about, and we'll discuss, what's the lead story for last night. Sometimes it's obvious. If LeBron and Luka both had triple doubles, and then Luka hits a game-winning three, we're leading with the Lakers. As most people know from watching our content, the de facto is probably we're leading with the Lakers no matter what happens. But maybe Jokic put up, like last Friday when he had his 30-20-20 game, maybe you say, okay, no, we really need to lead with Jokic. That's literally never been done before. So there might be some debate about that. And we end the meeting. Then we basically have 4.5 hours to build out the show. There could be news that breaks that we want to put in. I know, in the last month, we were waiting for the Joel Embiid injury news. We knew that was coming on whether he was going to miss the season. So that's one of those things. That week, every day, it was kind of built out at the bottom of the show, below the rundown, being like, okay, we know this news could be coming. And if, say, at 11:30 we found out Embiid was out for the year, all of a sudden that would be the lead story and everything would change, and whatever was the lead would get pushed down, and probably something would end up getting killed in TV parlance, which just means it's not going to run that day. So like a quick aside on that, the day Kyrie Irving requested his trade from Brooklyn, he did it at like 11 or 11:30 Pacific time, sometime around there, right before our show. We had this whole like Michael Jordan Day kind of show planned, and none of it ran. It was just straight hour talking about Kyrie Irving and what the trade means and what it could mean for Kevin Durant, and just a completely on the fly show. So usually that doesn't happen. So I'll be building stat graphics. So whenever you see those graphics, that's a researcher, that's someone in my role building them. I'm working with the graphics producer to make sure all of his fonts are accurate. He might be sending, hey, can you tell me what the Lakers defense is since January 15th or something like that, since they've been really good in that stretch. I'll have Malika ask me various questions. Shanae Agumake, who's one of the talent, she'll usually sit with me to get my thoughts on some of her takes, and she does a lot of video breakdowns. So I might help pick out plays and help her write up what her thing. And then, the number one thing, building my stat graphics. So then it's noon. I'm in studio. Ideally, the work is all done, but sometimes I've got to build a little bit at the end of the show, depending on if I wasn't able to get through it. Some shows there's a ton of graphics and I'm kind of swamped. Some days it's not so bad at all, and I've got nothing to do at that point. And then I'm just kind of waiting on their questions, trying to anticipate it. Like Shanae will honestly text me in the middle of the shows and like right before we're coming back, and I'll give her information that she'll then use in her takes. It's kind of crazy to see it. She asked me the other day, she asked me 3 questions and she used them all right in succession. It was kind of cool to see. And then we have our post-show meeting, talk about what went well, if there were any technical issues or any kind of issues anyone had, or if a topic maybe fell flatter than what we were expecting. And then I just have some time at the end of the day where I could start looking ahead to the next day. I sometimes send notes to Richard Jefferson on another U of A alum, of course. So I might be doing that if he's got a game the next day. And that's about it. So, I mean, that's the day side. Night side, we have a chat where we're sending notes on every game and everything that's happening, or if there's a huge trade, like certainly the night of the Luka trade, and it'll be kind of a feeding frenzy with everyone sending notes to add context, and those notes go out throughout the company. So a writer might use it. Obviously, a SportsCenter producer might see it and want that graphic or that note in the show, or a PA, a production assistant, cutting a highlight. And they can also ask us questions, and we try to provide context to their answers. Certainly, like the event producers, which are the people doing all the games that are on ESPN, they'll ask us questions to try to have some good information for their broadcasts.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Super cool to see how much goes into it. I think a lot of people, they watch these shows or they see them
Yeah.
and you don't realize all the crazy things that go into the background of it. And like you said, being prepared for things to just kind of switch and figuring
Oh,
out
yeah,
what's important, and the fact that you have such an influence on some of the cool stats and playing a big part in how the show comes together is super awesome.
definitely. Yeah, and that's the hardest part because especially working like a late night sports center. Luckily, us in our noon Pacific time window outside of trade season and free agency season, it's usually not too much. Maybe like an injury news break or something like that. But yeah, if you're on night sports center, anything could happen, and anything probably will happen.
Absolutely. No, it makes me think of the Luca trade being just like a month ago. I
Yeah.
remember being there late at night and I was just like, what is going on? So
Oh yeah.
I bet that was crazy for you guys to be kind of on top of for sure.
Yeah, we were. I wasn't working that night, but everyone was asking. We have our news desk has a chat too, so everyone was saying, "Is this real? Is this real?" And then one of our lead news editors said, "Yeah, I just talked to Shams. It's real. Not even because that tweet looked like it was fake, right? It looked like he
Yeah.
might have gotten hacked. That's what we all thought. So it's like, no, he literally talked to him on the phone. This is happening.
Yeah. It was unbelievable. And that's super cool to kind of see how you guys even thought it was fake as well.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And then you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but you mentioned like the statistics and the technical skills. What is the importance of research and statistics in the field of sports journalism?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd say what I do is even more storytelling and telling stories with numbers and trying to provide context. And if you see that the Lakers are getting killed in the paint, trying to say, "Hey, this is first how many?" Maybe if there's a particular player that they're destroying, and try to put all that kind of context on it. Context, that's the key word there. I mean, I think that's why you need it. We all watch a game, we see what's going on, but the stats give you a deeper lens, and depending on what the stats are, can really tell you what's going on. And I mean, that's my job, is to sell it at a level where the talent and the anchor can then sell it to the general audience, because if it's too complicated, and we have some super complicated stats, we have something called QSQ, which sounds crazy, and it's actually just like how good of shots are you taking? Just shot quality. So if you just say shot quality and you put it into a measure of whether it's really good or really bad or something like that, it's really easy to digest. So I'd say like that's what's important from my perspective, from my job, taking something that can be somewhat complicated and digesting it into something simple that makes sense, that can be packaged on TV. And I think that's what's so important. Like what I'm doing, I'm not really doing a ton of sophisticated math or anything like that. It's really just finding ways to put context around what's happening. Like here's a fun one from last night. The night before we're doing this podcast, Suns lost again to Memphis. Again, they shot the hell out of the ball, and again they lost. So twice this season, they've made 23s on 50% shooting at Memphis. You might remember a month or so ago, they lost in overtime in a 151-148 super high scoring game. So that's happened twice. In all of Suns franchise history, when they make 50% of their threes and make 20 of them, they're 13-1. And yet now in this last month, they have 2 losses at Memphis when they do that. So that's kind of some of the context. Like that was one I thought was kind of fun from last night, really kind of showing. I mean, I think that stat in itself just encapsulates this Suns team. Like incredible shooting, and then they lose.
Yeah.
So it's the stats. Yeah, it's important, and I think it's something that, and I mean, for me, more than anything, it's important to be able to sell it, because we have everyone from super advanced stat wonks like a Zach Lowe. Like when you're talking to Zach Lowe, our former colleague at ESPN, you're kind of talking at a higher level, because I mean, he's like the king of stats with from a writer perspective across really the basketball landscape. So for him, if he's asking you a question, it's going to be something pretty in depth. So you could kind of meet him at his level, and then other people, other anchors, you want to kind of drill it down to something that kind of makes sense for them to be able to say on air. It's really about getting that context out the best you can.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great way to put it, providing context, because I think the statistical stuff, especially like you said, you put these out on the graphics and all that, they're super interesting to me. I love it. There's so many random things, but they tell such a big story, and the way
Right.
you can kind of make it easier for the fans to understand. And being a Suns fan myself, I wonder the same thing. I'm like, why do we keep losing if we're shooting so well? Like those types of things, you can kind of explain that to people, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, and one I haven't done yet, but that I think I want to look at in the coming days is just the shot quality of their opponents, because it feels
Mhm.
like that is super high, right? We know like the easy stat is that their defense is very bad. They're at the
Mhm.
bottom of the league, especially over the last couple months defensively. So that's kind of like the first level stat. So then it's like, okay, why is the Suns defense so bad? I mean, from watching it, I think we all have a clue. Like they give up so many open shots. So I'm just kind of curious if the shot quality of its opponents is like off the charts high. I mean, we know it's high, right? Just from watching. So that's not going to be a surprise. But put some context for just how high it is.
Absolutely. No, that's the great part about stats. It's like once you get curious about something, you can go into it more, dig deeper, and
Exactly.
kind of find where it comes from. So, and then looking at your job a little bit more, what has been your favorite part of your time with ESPN, and what is something that you did not expect going into it?
Yeah, favorite part is probably the talent I get to work with. The one I always say, he hasn't been with the company for quite a while, but back in, I know, 2019 or so, I got to work with Scottie Pippen, which to me, just, growing up in the 90s and when I started to love basketball was when the Bulls were huge. And just think back, like, man, when I was a kid, to say that I would be not only working with Scottie Pippen, but I'd get to sit down with him and really dive into what's going on in the NBA. Like one of my so-called specialties is the salary cap, and how a team can put its players together and what kind of max contracts you can get. And obviously, that wasn't necessarily Scotty's thing. He's there to tell us about his experiences and all that. So if we needed a little context there, I'd be sitting there telling them about what the max contracts are and what this team can do and that team can do. It's like, man, this is crazy. I'm talking to Scottie Pippen. This dude is a legend. And we've had a ton of players like that. Tracy McGrady. I love Richard as well. So just getting to work with that level of talent and having them actually like use my stuff and like be someone who is actually really helping them is just a huge thrill. And then kind of going hand in hand with that, I've gotten to go on a lot of finals trips since 2017. I've pretty much traveled to all the finals, at least for one game, a lot of them, the whole series, outside of obviously the bubble. So getting to do that and getting to feel that travel aspect and just being on site for such an exciting event, especially 21 when the Suns were in it. That certainly was probably the biggest thrill of them all, but just getting to go on some of those trips, certainly all-star games too, but the finals is kind of the one thing that I very much am looking forward to every year. I didn't expect to be working that closely with analysts that where you could literally just be sitting down with them and just kind of the freedom you have to pitch things. I think that's the other kind of thrill. And I would say something that I wasn't expecting. Like I could think up an idea, and if I'm able to pitch it the right way to the producers, it's making TV that night. And I think that's something I didn't quite expect to the degree we're able to as researchers and certainly everyone else on the production staff.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's awesome. Just kind of seeing all the stuff that goes into it, and like you said, how your like just influence can make such a big difference, and also all the like the perks. I don't want to call it perks, but like going on the
Yeah.
trips and all these cool things. Like it might be a lot of work, like you said earlier, you're working a lot of nights and all that stuff, but then you get to
Yeah.
do this type of stuff. It makes it all worth it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely perk. And then, we get free Disneyland. Speaking of perks, we get free Disneyland tickets since ESPN's owned by Disney. So
There you go, even better.
that's probably the nicest quote unquote actual perk.
Yeah. And then kind of to finish things up here, if you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to break into the sports industry, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, just to go along with what I said earlier, just find your silo, get out there, put your hand in a lot of different pots, really see what you like about being in this industry, what you don't like, and try to get as much experience in college doing those kind of things. Because they will build on each other. And even if you don't think it's going to, like the one example I always like to give, my TV show, I literally just did it for fun. I was talking with 3 of my good friends about sports, and it was we got to have players on. Like, it was just a great time. I would do that with not even thinking anything about my future. And then I get to my ESPN interview and they said, have you ever seen a rundown? Have you ever done anything with the rundown? And granted, what we were doing at the dorm room sports chat at UATV in 2005 to 2008 certainly isn't what an ESPN rundown looks like, but it was a rundown. I at least had some concept of how you put that together and the thought behind that. And I was able to say yes to that answer, and it was one of those things that in all those years before, I never would have thought that would be something that could help me. And that did. So I think get as much diverse experience, really learn what you like. And then once you get, and not even end of college, even after that, kind of get a little bit more targeted.
No, that's a great way to end the show and good advice to have, especially just, take advantage of those opportunities that are presented to you and just see what's calling your name and where you can go with it.
For sure.
Well, everyone, that will do it for this episode. Today, we were joined by Michael Schwartz, the senior sports content researcher for ESPN. Michael, thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you joining me today.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I would like to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this episode. I hope you found it interesting and ultimately took something away that will help you in the next steps of your journey. And with that, we will see you next time on The Next Gen Game Plan, a podcast for future sports leaders.